Hi, shalom friends. You know, one of the most fundamental and important parts of being human is friendship. In fact, the Talmud has a one-liner that says, without friends, death is preferable. No one wants to be alone, but even being with people is not enough. Everyone needs friends. Children growing up, friendship is sometimes more important than scholarship. And anyone that's a parent, or perhaps what you remember yourself growing up, the need to be accepted as part of a group, to be invited, and to have friends, is really, really important. Really, really important. And often, if you had to choose between going to class or hanging out with friends, or even listening to parents or hanging out with friends, you chose friends because on some level, friendship is part of human development. What about those people who don't grow up with friends or friendship? The answer is they suffer a lot when they're adults. They find it very difficult to open up, share feelings, and because of that, they often find it difficult to find a spouse to marry, and if they're fortunate enough to find that sensitive soul, sometimes it's hard for them to relate to their children. They never had a chance to develop their own emotions through friendship. So if I asked you, what are some of the components? What makes a friend? And again, this is a beautiful subject, which we could get into at a different time, but we could certainly acknowledge that points of interest or commonality is a very important part of friendship. So if you enjoy sports, that's that bond that you both enjoy sports, watching sports, playing sports, makes friendship. If you both enjoy cooking or eating, if you enjoy traveling, perhaps you both enjoy the same music. Again, you see in your own life, whether it be hobbies or topics, or for that matter, you enjoy the same politics, or you're anxious and concerned about the same worries. You laugh at the same jokes. In all of these cases, the more similar, the more common, the stronger the bond, and the deeper the friendship. Okay, you knew that before, I told you. But here I'm going to get to the crux of my talk. How then do you explain the bond between grandchildren and grandparents? There's nothing in common. In fact, grandparents will say, and they're not ashamed to say it, I don't understand the modern generation. It's not only they don't share the same music, or the same love of food, or the same politics, or the same dress. It's actually missing a generation. It's almost like a child and a parent. Okay, there's 20 years difference. It's less than a complete generation. So they might be more open to that type of music. They might be more open to that type of dress. The decorations or what's considered art. But when you're talking about literally a generation in between, in many ways, there seems to be nothing in common. And yet, there's a beauty, and actually it's in the book of Proverbs, that the beauty of old age is grandchildren. Not by all, but many of us could know, perhaps from personal relationship with your own grandparents, and certainly from observing it by others, some of the most beautiful, beautiful interactions that we see between people is grandparents, grandchildren. What's even more interesting and somewhat ironic, that when your daughter marries this man who secretly you think is an idiot, suddenly becomes the father of brilliant children. And when your son marries this woman who secretly you think has terrible character, becomes the mother of the sweetest children on earth. Where does this come from? Where does this change? Well, I'm going to offer a possibility, and I'm going to use a Hasidic story, but I'm going to modify it a little bit. The story goes of a relationship between a grandfather, in Yiddish, grandfather is Zeide, and his grandson called Mendel, And Mendel in Yiddish is called an Einikel. So I'll alternate between Zeide and Einikel and grandfather and Mendel, the grandson. Anyway, they were very close. And Mendel, the grandchild, was very precocious. And the grandfather, the Zeide, used to really enjoy the conversations he had with Mendel, who at the age of this story was only 6 years old. One day, they're in the grandfather's study, and they're discussing something, and the grandfather's enjoying Mendel's response, and he suddenly stops and he says, "Mendel, can you point to where Zeide is? Can you point to where grandfather is?" Of course, Mendel looks at his Zeide and he points to his face. And his Zeide says, "No, that's not me. That's my face. Where am I?" So the grandchild points to the heart. And the grandfather says, "That's not Zeide, that's Zeide's heart." And so this continues. Each time the grandchild points to a part of the grandfather says, "That's not me, that's a part of me." Well, after a minute or two, Mendel says to his Zeide, "I gotta go," and he gets a kiss. He gets up, he starts walking out, and right before he gets to the door, Mendel trips. Probably he did it deliberately. He trips on the floor, and as soon as he trips on the floor, his grandfather gets up and says, "Mendel, are you okay?" And Mendel gets up from the floor with a big smile. He says, "This is Zeide. This is Grandpa." Now, I believe there are many lessons we could derive from it. I'll take one to share with you. What the grandson was saying is, there's Zeide's face, and there's Zeide's arm, and there's Zeide's heart. But you know what is Zeide? Zeide is love. Zeide is concern. Now let's just stop for a moment. Love is not physical. It could express itself in the physical, and often does, but it is not physical, because the physical is limited to time and space. That's physicality. Love transcends time. You could even love something that doesn't exist anymore. You could love the memory of your parents, grandparents, best friends, whatever. And it certainly is not limited in place. You could love people who are thousands of miles away from you. And it's a real, genuine love. Love is a very spiritual ingredient. And it's served in many different ways. What is Zeide? Zeide is love. Or Zeide stands for spirituality. Yeah, let me not be poetic. When was the last time you could see a grandparent teaching a grandchild? Today, the grandchildren are teaching the grandparents how to work the iPhone. Today, the grandchildren they know the tech. Parents and certainly grandparents are not up to it. They have no idea of how do you communicate? And the grandchildren good-naturedly teach grandma how to do email. What can grandpa or grandma teach the child? What do they know that he doesn't, or that he's not going to study in school? I'll tell you. They could teach him about love. They could teach him about dedication. They could teach him about truth. They could treat them about how to look at certain things in life. They could teach him about God. They know that. The child doesn't yet know that. And interestingly enough, the beauty, as the book of Proverbs say, the beauty of this connection is found especially between a grandparent and a grandchild. They're not looking to their grandparents necessarily to play soccer, or for that matter, even to get a Hanukkah gift. They're looking to their grandparents, even more than their parents at times, as a source of wisdom, as a source of, again, I'll use the word truth. So they might feel that they can't discuss certain things with their parents, but they could mention it to their grandparents, and they'll get an honest response, a genuine response. And this is something which is beautiful. There is no generation gap. On the contrary, the chasm in terms of, I don't understand these children the way why are they putting rings in their ears? Why are they putting tattoos on their skin? Why are they not getting a job in the summer? All of that is the physical. And that really does make a separation. But that's not crucial. You don't look to your grandparents so he could give you his or her evaluation on the latest music or TV show. You look to them for reality, for an anchor. These are people that have lived through X amount of years. They raised your parents. You see your parents from one side, they know your parents, and they're able to share with you insights about life that no one else can. So, what is Zeide? Zeide is love. What is Zeide? And for that matter, Baba, what are grandparents? You go to your grandparents to find out how to make latkes. You go to your grandparents to find out how did they do the Seder. You go to your grandparents, how was it when they went to the synagogue? How was it when they were growing up? How did you deal with the stresses of life? How did you turn out to be so good? How do you still remain married after 50 years? These are the questions that they're either asking or looking for. And this is where we have the strength to receive. Now, I'll end off by saying that to a certain extent, we have to look at our rabbis, our teachers, and our sages not only as repositories of wisdom, but of loving Zeides. Every teacher of Torah is an elder. And as we know, Shala Vicha V'Yagetcha, ask your elders, they will tell you. So, I'm not advocating old age. I'm merely reminding us that spirituality is timeless and eternal. Let's hope for the day when all of us will be advocates for wisdom, and with wisdom will come together great love. Shalom.